Hi, I'm Chris Grimm, founder, coach, principal consultant of ARIA Consulting. For 24 years, we've been serving leaders and their teams around the world. This podcast, which I wanted to call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but it's called And Then I, is nothing scripted, nothing fancy. I promise that we'll be talking about successes and failures. It's the gold, I call it, that you find only in real stories with real leaders in real time. With that, I invite you to sit back, soak up the wisdom here of these everyday superheroes. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. It's Chris Grimm, and welcome to this episode of our podcast from ARIA Consulting called And Then I, where I get to talk to people I believe are superhumans, leaders who are willing to join us and tell stories about real life so that you can learn from their successes and sometimes they're not so successful moments. And today I'm humbled to be with Carol, Lavin, Bernick. Full transparency, everyone. I only know Carol because my father worked with her during something we're going to talk about. In part is transformation at Alberto Culver. We'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I just want to really help our listeners and anybody who's viewing the video understand why I'm so excited about this. Carol is currently the CEO of Polished Nickel Capital Management, which is your company that does investments, I'm assuming, and other charity work, or maybe that's a little different. We can talk about that. 37 years at Alberto Culver, your family's business, rising up to the executive chairship, which to me is amazing. Selling the company to Unilever after you also brought to market name brands, things that many people here might know about, like Static Guard, thank you very much, Mrs. Dash, but also everyday brands that are in the grocery store. So really, everybody listening, this woman, this superhuman, is in your life, whether you know it today, you know it for real. She's currently serving as chair of the board for Tulane University, also on the board of Northwestern Memorial Healthcare. I could go through the list of things that you've accomplished, but honestly, I think it would take like an hour. One thing I pulled out though, Carol, I want to make sure I mention, in 2005, they gave you an award. The Moms in Business Network gave you the National Working Mother of the Year. And when I was reading that, I was like, oh, I can't wait to get into this conversation with you because I feel like so many people right now, specifically working moms, are trying to figure out this new world that we're in. So anyway, everybody, I think there's a lot of depth and breadth. I'm going to stop talking soon and just let Carol tell some stories. We had a pre-conversation and talked about something that is near and dear to both of us. And for those of you who are familiar with our whole toolkit on ariacoach.com, resilience is a topic that I like to deep dive into whenever I can. And today we're going to do that. So Carol, with that, I'm going to pass this over to you and just maybe let you set the stage around, what does resilience mean to you? Why is it important for people? I'll just let you do that.
I'm going to start with something that's non-business. And I was at a conference a whole bunch of years ago. It was a family business conference, and it was one of the best in the world. They hold it every other year. I won't name the company that does it, but they have the top family businesses around the globe. And so most of the seminars are on business, but there was one on kids. And it was conducted by a top psychology doctor at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which, as you probably know, is the #1 children's hospital in the country. And the essence of his message was, we really screwed up a couple decades of kids, really seriously. We put them in Montessori schools, and we gave them total independence. And what we did was we built their self-esteem by telling everything they did was wonderful. Their butterfly was the best. Their fort was fantastic. Everything they did was just top of the world, fabulous. And then in 4th grade or 5th grade or 3rd grade, we sent those kids into a real school system. And guess what? Their butterfly wasn't the best. Their fort wasn't the best. They didn't understand how to deal with hardship and deal with difficulty. That same conference, I went to a second, was a 4-day conference. I went to a second seminar, and this top psychologist from California said, when you do your kids' homework, you're basically telling them they're not good enough to do it themselves. And they had all kinds of stories about Harvard people and Stanford people who were failing because they didn't have the support systems that they'd had their whole lives. So from the personal standpoint, I mean, I've had a fantastic life. It's not over. I'm doing lots of things and it's very, very busy. But for all the wonderful experiences I had a son born 8 weeks early, thankfully healthy. Another baby who was stillborn at 7 months. My oldest kid had kyphosis. I don't know if you know what that is, but you wear this god awful, your back is curving. And you get this god awful Milwaukee brace for 3 years of high school. So you're kicked off the tennis team. You're no longer anyway cool. You look like a complete dork. It's just awful. My brother died of a drug overdose at 42. He was an addict for years. University I adore, vice chairman of Tulane at the time. It goes through Hurricane Katrina. Financial exigency, $300 million worth of damage in the city that, was just devastated. I had an awful public divorce. I mean, lots of people go through divorces. I'm married to the CEO of our company and I'm executive chairman. Imagine what that does to your thousands of people. What do they worry about? They don't really worry about you, they worry about them.
Right.
You freak them completely, let alone freaking your children and everybody else. It was amazing the impact on other people that had as well as ourselves. And then right after I get divorced, took 2 years to do it, I met this incredible love of my life, Bobby, and we had 8 fantastic years together, but honestly, the last 4, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, and he lived for 4 years with it. And so I could go, I got 6 or 7 more of those equally that traumatic. And people say, oh, you're so strong. I guess I'm strong, but I just have this belief that if I go down in the depths with all this, I'm going to miss out on what's next, and everybody in their life has really tough things, but resilience is I've done everything in my power to build it into my 3 kids, and I have 8 grandkids now, 8 and under, and hard to build resilience into a 4-year-old, but they really screwed up that goal and they, flunked that test or whatever. It's I think it is the number one gift I would give my grandchildren if I could. There's something called the Japanese garden. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but it's a weaving road with lots of boulders in it. It's what the Japanese believe life is. It's, on your path, there's going to be very, very many things that are tough. And for heaven's sakes, if you don't need resilience in business, it's the number one thing you need in business too, because business is basically problems. But I will explain more, I'm sure, when you ask me some other questions, you'll get a better sense of what I mean by that.
It's funny as you were saying this, thank you for sharing all that, first of all. I think it's really easy. There's a million podcasts, Carol. I know you've been on some. I've listened to at least one with Wall Street Journal, and they're all great. But one of my biggest complaints is that I feel like business focused or leadership focused are usually fairly shallow. Yeah. And most of the time, well, you have to know this, right? People don't open up and share what you just did, right? About the real life. And so I want to thank you for that on behalf of everybody at any moment in time when they listen to this. It happens to be 2021, but I hope this lasts forever and people continue to learn from it. And look, I agree with you. I think we as Americans, I'll just speak for a moment about it. I feel like terms like resilience, emotional intelligence, I think there's a whole group of these things that they become commercialized. And then most people, don't really understand what it means.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about it, because I actually do think you know what it means. And going through your book, which is amazing that you did this. People on video can see it. People on audio, you can find it. It's called Gather As You Go. it's really just, you said call it sharing lessons learned along the way. That's really what you did in a pretty amazing way. And so I love that you're a lifelong learner. And I'm guessing you've always been that person, or you wouldn't have been able to do, what you did. And can we talk a little bit? I know you wanted to share some stories. I'd love for you to maybe go where you want to go, either in personal life or in business life, but maybe talk about those moments where you had to learn to recover, right? Like maybe it was early in your career or something, and maybe that was when the light bulb came on, right? You didn't maybe call it resilience, but you knew this isn't going to stop me.
You know what? I chose one because you said we might talk about this, and for God's sake, I've had plant explosions, not our fault, but our products at someplace else. I've had the cancer, I've had divorce, I've had 7 ingredients banned by the US government. I could talk about any of those, but I chose one that actually came a little bit later in my career. And it's a very long story, so let me try to make it short. We own the Sally Beauty Company, 2,500 stores, the #1 beauty supply company in the world. And we owned the Alberto Culver Company. And we were, this was one corporation. My biggest competitors running the consumer products company, L'Oreal and Procter & Gamble and 52 more, were Sally's biggest customers. So it was really a tricky situation. Early, when consumer products wasn't doing so well, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when consumers started winning awards and being, the fastest growing shampoo company in the nation, things like that, it really, I'd be thrown out of a Safeway store because Sally was next door. It was terrible. But anyway, we decided we needed to separate these two companies. And so we went forward. We're talking about the year 2005 or 6. It was culminated in 2006. But I'm executive chairman of the board. We've decided we're going to merge our Sally Beauty Company into the Regis Corporation, which is, Supercut's biggest hair salon. Yeah. And all of my customers at Sally weren't too happy about this. The stock took a hit. Usually stocks go up. It took a hit at that time. And over the next 5 months, while we were doing all the due diligence and everything, Alberto came to the position that this wasn't a good thing for us. So we paid a whopping $50 million breakup fee, which is huge money to Alberto Culver. But I recommended it. I just felt this was a bad thing for some reasons I can't go into. But anyway, so now this is exactly the same time as my divorce, something that came out at the same time. At the same time, my father has had a heart condition that wasn't a heart attack, but looked like it was going to be. And I got my board furiously angry, and the market's angry, and the you don't announce a public divestiture of a company. You just don't do that and then not let it happen. So probably the worst 3 weeks of my life. But anyway, Goldman Sachs was our banker on the Regis deal. Yeah. They're furious, of course, too. Big money loss for them. 3 weeks later, I need to find a buyer for Sally. I need to do this. It was the right strategic move. I had to do it. Well, Merrill Lynch brings in Clayton, Dubilier, and Rice, and they had a lot of experience with retail companies and the whole distribution channel. So I went to New York with Goldman because, of course, they're in the deal for the next 24 months, and Merrill. And I meet this guy, Don Gogel, who's really quite wonderful, in a very normal looking New York building for a private equity firm. It didn't feel like it was too rich or anything like that. And I'm really liking these people. This is our first meeting. And of course, they'd done a lot of work on Sally, and they wanted to go into Sally, and they wanted to interview our people and move forward and all the rest of it. Well, I'm in a meeting with myself, my investment advisors, a couple of my executives, and I say to them, look, I have to tell you something that you probably are not going to want to hear, but I think it's really important that you know. They said, what? And I said, I have every belief that our biggest customer, who's about 20% of our Sally business, is going to pull in the next 2 months. And shock value that's crazy. And we had heard it in the rumor mill. There was some diversion going on in the industry. I'm not so sure Sally wasn't a part of that. I don't really have any proof, but we were selling a lot of goods. And L'Oreal was making noise, and they were recruiting people, and it just felt like they were going to pull. So the bankers are beyond angry at me because I didn't have any proof. How can you do that? My board wants nothing more than to culminate a deal. And, the pressure is 100% on me because my then soon to be ex-husband was leaving the company at this point. And not because we got divorced, or getting divorced, but it's just right. He was not going to go forward to be part of the Alberto deal. He wasn't a consumer product. Anyway, so Don says to me, Carol, why don't you come into my office? Okay. So I go in there and I go, he said, why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you tell me before? I said, this is our first face-to-face meeting. You haven't been in the Sally company. I can't let you go unless you give me complete assurance that if you go into my place, short of a situation you're going to find in my books, you're going to go forward with this. I can't have this disruption again. So they went away and they took 2 weeks, 2 long weeks, and decided that they were going to come in. They gave me the assurance we were moving forward. Well, we ended up culminating the deal, and it was great and all the rest of it. And 2 months later, L'Oreal pulled. Now, Clayton Duvalier thought they had enough connections with France and the people there, and and they could hold it. They couldn't hold it. Okay, Alberto Culver stockholders, it was Reverse Morris Trust. Alberto Culver stockholders had to hold their shares. We did for 2 years, our family. Stock went from 7 to 2. It's a $25 dividend for Sally plus a $7 stock plus a 20-something dollar Alberto share. And my family's stock went from 7 to 2 and sat down there for a long time. It later recovered and went to 30. I'm not complaining in any way, but it was a really, really, really tough decision to make. Everybody pushing back. Why'd you tell them that? Well, can you imagine the fraud situation, 2 months later? Right. So you talk about resilience. It's like, I knew going in, I might be blowing that whole deal, but I'm kind of an in-your-face honesty sort of executive. Yeah. And, I call it those 3 weeks of my father turned out to be a pacemaker, but felt like a heart attack. Finding out my ex-husband, and I didn't want to be with anymore for reasons you can probably guess and imagine. And this Sally deal going south. It was probably one of the heaviest time of resilience. And I don't know how I made it through, but
I don't know how you did either, but as you were talking, I was like, okay, this lady has superhuman courage, or, as you were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm imagining, I've coached enough people, Carol, right? Like I'm imagining, at night, you just kind of going.
I really, my marriage breaking up, my parents were married for 60 years. Howard's parents were married for 60 years. I never saw that one coming. But you know what? I had thousands of people counting on us, and we've gone through this culture change, and I was so close to so many of these people in our company. And, I had the lives and futures of thousands of people, and I had an executive team who was wonderful. I mean, truly, truly fantastic. But, I believe that business is problems. I don't think any of us are needed, to run things that don't come broken with problems. And, we've had, you'll laugh if I tell you some of the things that Alberto went through, it's just crazy, but I'll wait for that question before I go through a bunch more.
Oh, look, we can go there. It's, as you were talking, I'm like, okay, so first of all, I need to set this up so everybody understands. Family business, your dad and mom worked there, right? When you started. 37 years is a really long time to be in any organization, whether it's your family's company or not. So I know what I can only understand a fraction. And then for our listeners and viewers, Carol wrote what is now, in the collections of Harvard Business Review, your 2001 article. It's so funny, when I went to reprint it, I think I've reprinted this and given it to people so many times, Carol. It's called When Your Culture Needs a Makeover. But you're a way shower. And I say that to you because even though some people might say to me, 2001 is a long time ago, there are still companies today that cannot do what you did, right? So I do want to talk about this because I think that what you did and how you want to talk about it is more relevant today post-COVID for many leaders and organizations than we could have guessed, right? When you wrote this, obviously we couldn't predict that in 2021 would be here. Let's just talk about this. What is most meaningful to me, but I want you to tell your version of the story. I really feel like if I had a one-liner, I would say that you made it okay for people to align their personal values with the organization's values so that they could hopefully feel like, it was like some super contribution. And that's really hard to do.
No, it's, I have to set the stage for a minute first. Sally was taking off and was doing extremely well. Alberto consumer products, VO5, TRESemme, St. Ives, Noxema, Mrs. Dash, Static Guard were the #2 products of color company in the world. Motions, TCV. I mean, we were failing in the consumer products part of the business. And the board was talking about dissolving the company or selling off its assets or whatever and sticking with Sally. And when I took over this USA business, which is 1996, and it's the time that my husband became CEO and I became president of North America. I'm a big survey queen. I'm a marketing person by birth. I'm a survey queen. So I did massive surveys, and the business had real problems and the morale had horrible problems. And, I'd have a bunch of men on my team. I had one other woman, but they're mostly men, let's face it. It's the way it was, the way it is. And the guy said, if you fix the business problems, the morale will improve. And I thought, that doesn't fix it for me. I thought we had to fix both. So I was part of a YPO forum group, and I still am for going on 28 years now. And I had 4 public companies in my YPO forum group. And one of the companies was one of the best companies to work for in America. And the other one was a big auto parts. I mean, these are big companies. You'll know the name I told you. And what I learned in all that time was that these macho guys running these big companies, and then 3 other family companies as well, they had the same emotional crap that I had. They cared as much for their kids as I did. They certainly didn't show it until you were in the privacy of a YPO forum. But it just kind of hit me that we all want the same thing. We want healthy kids. We coined something Alberto called your higher power. I didn't care if it was, we all work for our higher power, whether it's your church or your family or your parents or your sick kid or whatever it is. People want more in their life than just business. And we ended up creating, people ask me what we did. Well, we did 23 things, and I do a 2-hour seminar on that. But at the end of it, Alberto's business was in the gutter. And this culture change, I believe it's the single best product Alberto's ever created. And it did so many things. It validated people's higher power, which is what you're talking about. We were a caring company, never a caretaking company. People will say, ask your dad, the toughest company they've ever worked for is Alberto Culver. It's not like we made it easy. But I had a daughter who was on a traveling softball team. I said, we got to get this done before 3 o'clock. I got to be out of here. Now, that didn't stop me from answering emails at 11 o'clock at night or calling a meeting at 7:30 because somebody else wanted to coach a hockey team. I know my CFO was at Alberto for 20 plus years and then went on to be head of my family business office when we left. His #1 thing he wanted to do coming out of Swift and Keebler and ConAgra was he wanted to coach his son's hockey team. Right. We created a company where we could recognize the what else in people's lives. We also created a company where there was no pride in Alberto stuff before we started this whole thing. And we coined a phrase that basically was involved however much money we made, the more we'd help our business and we'd help our communities. So what we will become is up to all of us, of course. And every extra dollar we made, we showed videos where we were helping charities around the city and where we were building benefits to our people. And it became something where the pride level in who we were and what we did rose so amazingly well. And I believe this one simple thing. the biggest single difference for Alberto was our people. We couldn't outspend Procter and Unilever. We couldn't out formulate their products, but we could fight hard for high quality people and give them more independence. And the single thing people wanted more than anything was to make a difference. So we allowed that to happen. And, you know, the proof is in the stock. I mean, it's not that it's me talking about it or Harvard writing an article about it, but to imagine that British Broadcasting Company, Marriott Hotels, Chicago Tribune, I've got 10 of these that came to us and asked us if we'd share what we did. And we did a day seminar for anybody who wanted to come. But the single biggest thing in doing that, it can't be done by your HR director. It will never happen. It has to be done by the CEO or the head of a massive division, if you will. You have to be involved. You have to believe it. And what I believe you do in a company to really make it work, especially one where we had, you know, we weren't the biggest anywhere, right? We were about $4 billion before we split off Sally and about 2 after, but we competed for people against Procter & Gamble, against General Electric. I mean, how are we gonna make this work? So, you know, as I said, there were 23 things that we did, but our saying was powerful growth yields the privilege to care. And so we had to make more money. We had to, you know, sell more products. And I mean, your dad would know. It's like we voted on which charities to support. We voted on which hospitals to, you know, make a difference at. And it really worked. It really worked.
Can I ask you, I didn't think about this before, but it all of a sudden I'm like, well, wait a minute. You know, when you decided, I've read the article so many times, and I know your dad was in the business originally founding as you were doing this, and then Howard CEO, your husband at the time, then your ex-husband. I know your mom at one point in time, I think in the article it talks about when you entered the company, HR reported to your mom, right?
Right.
Like a family business, right? So you had all that. So when you decided to embark on this culture change and had the vision for this, what was the reaction? Like, what was your dad saying? What was Howard saying? Like, were they all in immediately or?
No. But let me flip back to the beginning of the company. My mom and dad bought this little company. They paid $400,000 for it.
Wow.
And it was $100 million 10 years later in the 1960s. And he was on every talk show. He won on Time Magazine, you know, Inside. He won Swedish Marketing Man of the World. I mean, all kinds of craziness and fantastic craziness. I wasn't there yet. And they were a very open, warm, giving company, parties, all this stuff. Well, it didn't work for them because people picked all their people. They had so much turnover because they were so incredibly successful that their people were being stolen. So my parents kind of shut down on a need to know basis. That's what it was. When I came there, you know, there's a lot of people in this company. So there were pockets of good morale and pockets of bad morale. Yeah. And as I said, I'm a survey queen, right? So when I took over USA, I was head of new products before that, and I ran part of the toiletries division. I'm growing TRESemme, all this kind of stuff. But when I took over and did these surveys, I did a survey. My HR department did a survey, general population of Culver, and I went to my mom and dad and I said, "Give me the 50 people you want me to survey. Let's take the people you think are building this company." The results were not very different. So it was really, really not good. I went to our board of directors when I was going to start this new strategic plan. And I said, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but if we can take our pre-tax profits from 2% to 8%, and if we can exponentially grow sales in the next 3 years, I want $4 million in a bonus program." It's a secret bonus program. They looked at me, they said, "Yeah, you can have it. Go right ahead. You can have it." I mean, not a single belief that it was going to happen.
Right.
Damned if it didn't happen. But Howard and my dad were both, this was not their bag. My dad's a salesman and Howard's a financial guy. The whole people side of it, they like people, you know, but it was not their bag. And I would get harassed by my family. You have too goddamn many meetings, you know, it's like in tone. And I don't think they realized, I don't think they ever really understood that the success of our business and the growth of our business was coming from the people believing that they could make a difference. I don't think they really got that. Yes, we created a new product and yes, it went, but I believed when we did this culture change that if I could get the top 25% of our people to work 10% smarter, right? If I could give them all the benefits and all the help and all the assistance and the money, you know, to be able to do what they wanted to do more effectively, it would be like hiring a quarter more people. That's exactly what we did. We got rid of this. We had something we did every we have GDL meetings. This is a 2-hour lecture, so I'm not going into it, but we kind of grouped all the people into groups of 10 to 20 people with somebody in charge of them called their group development leader, later growth development leader, that was responsible for their careers, the morale, understanding what the company was trying to do, the rumors in the company, 15 things. And I met with these people every month, and I'm forced every VP in the company to be in that room with these 72 people at the same time. And we had something called macros and irritations. And irritations were the crap that was keeping people from thinking that we were going further. We knocked 2 or 3 irritations off the wall, just got rid of them every time we met. And people understood that their input was what was growing the company. So no, they gave me the $4 million bonus. You can't imagine how fun it was to walk around and hand people $10,000, $20,000. Every person in the entire organization got a 4-piece set of luggage that one worldwide team, and they got a dinner certificate even if they were on the factory floor. But to walk out and give somebody not expecting a $10,000 bonus or a stock prize, I mean, it was one of the most joyous couple of days I've ever had. And nobody expected us to get there.
Not normal, Carol, which is why you get to do 2-hour seminars on it. And it's actually why I asked about your dad and Howard, because I'm in organizations every day. We're a boutique consulting firm. You know, people don't spend money on us unless there's pain. Yep. And in most cases, you probably get this, but for our listeners, I want to frame it because we have all different clients at all levels. We've got big enterprise customers, many of which, like Alberto Culver, have the resources and the leadership by someone to fight for a culture change. Like you said, 23 steps. And even going back to the article, I was smiling because I'm like, you know, you have to be committed.
Well, and here's the other thing. If they were not willing to let me do this, I was leaving. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's really big.
I'm the founder's daughter. That's pretty big. I created Mrs. Dash at the time, which is a big winner for the company.
Yeah.
It was clearly a marketing success in the company, but I couldn't be a part of it. I mean, people were too important to me. I just couldn't, I didn't want to be a part of that company anymore when I read all the, what's wrong with us. So I did have a big stick to walk in with, but they ignored me took us 4 years to really do it. But each year got better. It's like losing weight. The first 10 pounds is nice. The next 10 and 10 and 10, and pretty soon you get what you want,
But you have to want it, right? I'm so glad you shared that, because coming back to the resilience topic, I feel like right now, not only are we seeing individuals, leaders, individual contributors, everyone's kind of saying, wait, time out. Like, what did I learn from the pandemic? If people were sent home, we do have a large population that stayed at work. And thank you to those people, right? Our truck drivers and our warehouse people and all the amazing frontline workers everywhere. But for all the people who got sent home, I feel like we have this like fog. And part of it is as individuals trying to figure out what the next thing is. But like I said, I called you a way shower because I believe organizations are struggling to either recapture the energy and the identity of who they thought they were before COVID. Many organizations, as you know, their business either completely changed or was, some of their assumptions about themselves were challenged. And so coming back after this, I think is requiring not just personal resilience, but organizational resilience. And so in some ways,
it's so there's, what's coming is a big question and I'm reading a lot on it, visiting people and different opinions. And this company is, going from 1 million square feet to 100,000 square feet. They don't need, office spaces. I don't know. I'm very involved. I was the chairman of Northwestern Healthcare, top 10 healthcare system in the nation. They didn't go away. I'm chairman of Tulane University. They, last year, they had 80% of their classes on ground. They fought through this. They did pool testing of their kids every other day. I mean, they had a COVID hotel. They did an amazing job. So I'm of the belief that, and everybody wanted to be there. I have a small office. I have 25 people now. It's our holding company for all of our investments. It's all of our charities, and we have a couple of family businesses. We have a couple of family equity for private equity firms. But my people wanted to come back. We're a fun place to be. This is a family. This is a group. You know, I believe that when you run a corporation, no matter how big or small it is, that for it to function really well, these are your people. You know, you have to grow them. You have to build their careers. You have to give them new experiences. Yes, there's massively more turnover than there was when I was growing up, and there's all kinds of changes in technology. But it's like, you know, one of the goals for my people are, what are you going to do to grow this year? You know, you're not going to get that bonus unless you sit down with me and tell me what you're going to do to grow and how you're going to help my business, whether I'm at Alberto or whether I'm at a financial company, which is basically what we are now. But I don't know, I'm on the side of people need to be working together. Even our salesmen worked at home. I mean, all salesmen work at home. Are you kidding me? We're going to pull them into the office frequently. We're going to have retreats frequently. We're going to do things but they were out talking to customers all the day. It's not like they were sitting at home. So I know a lot of businesses are going to change. I fear for the young people who won't have, you know, the mentors that sit there, whether they know they're mentoring people or not. You and I talked before about who are my mentors. Of course, my parents were my mentors on many things, not on other things. But I had the privilege of being asked to join the Northwestern Healthcare Board when I must have been late 30s. And I'm sitting there with John Canning, started Madison Dearborn Partners. I can name 13 people that, you know, the guy who ran McDonald's, Bill Osborne, who ran Northern Trust. These are Chicago's biggest companies that everybody who's anybody seems to be on these boards. And I'm a young woman listening to these guys. Okay, so they don't know they're my mentors, but damn, I'm writing down. I'm watching people who don't talk for 4 meetings, say one word, and it's powerful. I'm watching somebody else who talks all the time and isn't listened to. I'm listening to people. My mentors are the people that I get exposed to. So how do you not have that when people are at home all the time? I think you can probably effectively run a lot of businesses from home, but I don't think you'll have the longevity of people. And I don't think you'll have happy people. But I don't know. It's just my opinion.
I completely agree with that. Carol, I completely agree with you. First of all, we have enough essential services customers that I didn't stop during the lockdowns. I was traveling pretty much the whole time. Everybody, TSA when no one else is there is awesome. But besides that, I agree. I think it's a mistake. And I've been very vocal in some of our big customers that they've knee-jerk. I feel like it's been a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, look, we can save on real estate. Like, we don't need offices anymore. Let's redesign our offices. I'm like, why are we making permanent decisions right now about how people work? And you said something really important when you were talking about they didn't know they were my mentors. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And I encourage anybody who's listening to this who has an opportunity to go on a charitable board. Go on a really good one. Do not do the scout work. Make sure we are impressed with the people who are on that board. It doesn't have to be the CEO of the company, but make sure you are impressed by the people, because if you're going to give your time, it's hard to raise a family and coach a soccer team and be an executive of a company and be on a corporate board. Best thing I ever did was join those corporate boards. Best possible thing. Now, honestly, I chose not to join public company boards because I had such amazing exposure to these guys. And Northwestern Hospital went from being tripled the size of the healthcare system in the time that I was chair alone. Not anything because of me, but just something that, you know, we were working on to happen. But I think it's a $9 billion system now. It's a big place. with big problems and big issues and union issues and, $700 million new Epic systems. I mean, crazy, crazy big stuff. It's not like it's a charity, if you will. It's a huge corporation that happens to be not for profit. But I couldn't be more aggressive in telling people to join something that's powerful and cool.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, are you a proponent of formalized mentoring? Do you also think people should do that? Like, what are your feelings about how people should learn?
You know what? I believe you scare people when you say, will you be my mentor?
Yeah.
Because it gives you access to them more than you want. I am a believer, people ask me to join their boards. I'm done joining very many more boards, but I'll give anybody a day of my time. I will sit in a retreat with any organization who wants me. I send that book out. It benefits Enchanted Backpack when people pay for it, but I've sent out 30,000 copies. And it comes back the powerful way to me because people make a donation to charity anyway. But I don't know. Then you get in a formalized mentorship program, and sometimes you outgrow your mentor. So, I had that situation personally. So I think you want people who are your supporters. And if you ask them to be a support for you, when I became chairman of Alberto's board, this company would not have existed without my parents and doing a phenomenal job and the structure and the setup and everything else. But we were lucky. It did grow exponentially in the second generation. When I took over the chair of the board, it was so funny. It's really funny. You sat in our boardroom according to longevity and service. So my father was there. My mother was right side. Somebody who'd been a director for 30 years and on down.
Wow.
Well, the first thing I did was sit in the middle of the table, put down place cards. And I mean, it was the radical difference of what happened. And right. It just set the stage. But before I had my first meeting, I went, and I didn't know Chris Galvin very well, but he was Motorola. And I went to Kellogg and the University of Chicago and talked to a couple of professors. And I said, look, we are a benevolent dictatorship. Very nice. But my dad is the one who calls it all. And I need to come to the, whatever century I wanted to be in at that point. I could jump a couple at a time. But anyway, I went and asked for help. So I believe the smartest people I know ask for help. And if you go, I call them my supporters. I didn't know Chris. I've met him once or twice. I said, will you sit down with me for an hour? Almost anybody will sit down with you for an hour. It's much easier to get that than it is to get a mentor. Now, if you have a mentor, I think that's fantastic. And some people reach out to mentor you. I know we had this guy, Dick Ogilvy, who was actually governor of Illinois a million years ago. And I think he was mentoring me without me realizing it. He brought me into the economic club really young. He pushed me to different things early on. And I guess I would call that, being mentored, but I didn't really know it until after I realized what he was doing 10 years later. So I think it all works, but I'm just saying you shouldn't get hung up because you don't have a mentor. You should read and follow what people are saying. And, anyway, I've gone on too long about all that.
No, it's so good. Look, I actually believe that for those who will listen to this, who are ambitious, and we get a lot of those, Carol, like that. We're a magnet for those people. That's why I exist. And what I always default to, and I'm guessing you might too, is I don't believe we do our best learning in classroom situations. I think real life is the best place to learn. Yeah. And so what I always say to people is, first of all, I don't care if you journal, I don't care where you write things down, although I'm a huge proponent of it. And I think it's helpful to me, at least, to reflect on things. Clearly you have a book, so you do too. But I say to people, you should periodically be thinking about, what am I learning? Who am I learning from? And like you said, maybe it's not formalized, but reflecting on it, being aware of it is a part of that learning cycle. And I was going to ask you, since you've had so many different leadership roles still now today, what do you look for in people? Like, what would they demonstrate for you to say, oh, that person gets the resilience thing? Like they've got it, like tick that off the list.
So I think it's hard, but I do a couple of things that, are probably pretty simplistic. One is when I interview anybody who's going to come to my company in the top, 30, 40 people, not just someone to report directly to me. And I try to sell them on what's wrong with our company, because I really don't want anybody there who is going to be there for a long time. But I say, so tell me, what have you screwed up in your life? What have you failed with? What are you disappointed that you've done differently? And the really, really good people have a whole lot to tell me, a whole lot to tell me. And a whole lot of people give you the softball nothing answers. And, when you get that, I go, well, either they're not honest enough to work for our company, or they haven't taken enough risk to make it happen. I'll never forget. One of my executives ended up hiring, he said, you mean when we put Easy Off oven cleaner into Pam cans and shipped them? So Pam is the can spray and Easy Off. I go, you can work at Alberto Culver. I mean, that's that you can kill people with that one. So I look for honesty, and I look for answers that they're not afraid to tell me. And if you're sure of yourself, it's like, I'm going to answer that in another minute because I have something interesting to tell you. But the other thing I do is I check my own references. Okay, so I have headhunters, and they give me all this stuff, but then I go find somebody who worked at this company or this company, and I learn that they knew the person, and I call them up after hours and I say, hey, John, I just interviewed Mary Smith and she seems wonderful. I'm really excited. I'm, chairman of the board of Alberto Culver Company, and I'm hiring her to be head of strategic planning and marketing. And here's what I'd like you to do. If you can be a very, very positive reference, and if she's somebody who you would hire again, somebody who is at the top of your list of people you love working with, call me back. And if she's just a good person, and all the rest is great, don't bother. It's fine. I get it. She's a good candidate. So I don't make it sound like she's gonna lose her job. But if you don't call me back, I do not hire that person. I'm sorry. I do it to 3 or 4 people that I found. So if 3 of them call me back, who cares? The other guy was a jerk. So it really, if she's not one of the best people that you've had to work for you, I frankly don't want her. But you asked me a question about. So I didn't know it at the time, but I'm almost positive of it now. I believe I was being interviewed for a very significant board by a chairman who flew in with his CEO. And you probably figured out if you think hard enough about it. But we're casually sitting at dinner, and he said, so what's one of the hardest things that you've had to deal with? And this is a multinational, big company. And I think about it for a minute, and I said, the culture change. The culture change at Alberto made all the difference in the world, made our stock right, everything else. And when I think back on it, I think about it. If you don't get that, if you don't get it, he wanted to hear about Moz and Mrs. Dash, or he wanted to hear about the plant explosion, or he wanted to hear about VOCs killing our VO5 hairspray, or cyclamates killing Sugar Twin, or hexachlorophene killing. He wanted to hear the catastrophes. In my mind, after I left that, going, I think I was being interviewed, and I don't think I got it. But for you to really understand that, maybe it's because Alberto didn't have as much money as Procter, or Unilever, or L'Oreal, or whoever, but people were everything, just absolutely everything. And to be able to get, we were vendors of the years, the last 4 years that we were in business, and TRESemme was fastest growing hair care brand for the last 5 years, I think. And we won, awards that who would have ever thought, and Alberto stock was touted. It was our people, without question, it was our people.
You just triggered something in our prep call. I don't know contextually where we were in the conversation, but I think this little road is an important one, because you're demonstrating it this whole time, and I hope people who are listening and watching are getting it. Like, you are so good at straight talk and not BSing around. Like, and there's a really I don't know how to explain it. It's ferocious, but in a really awesome, good way. Like in some, at least I am attracted to it. And in our prep call, I don't know whether we were talking about you bringing somebody into the office to, hopefully they're going to be honest with you, but you actually like almost role played it. And I think it would be helpful because even though today we're talking about resilience, you're demonstrating through everything here that part of that is you being courageous enough to have direct conversations, right? To confront things. And you saying like, I want those people to work with me, right? I want them to be honest.
Yeah. In fact, not to interrupt you, but I'll never forget this. We had a wonderful scientist. He's head of our laboratories, and I had tried to hire him. He was head of SC Johnson Wax Laboratory for a long time, and I didn't get him the first time around. And I was really upset because I really thought he was going to be great. He went to Underwriters Laboratory, I think, in a big job. And it took us a long time to fill this job, but I don't settle. So we limp along and whatever. And right before I was about to hire a guy, I went back to him and I said, would you consider us? And he said, I'm not that happy. I think I would. So we got him, and that was terrific. It took me a year and a half to get him comfortable in our culture, because I think at JWAX family company, I think they were very courteous of each other and very kind, and they never pulled anybody apart. I believe that business is problems. When you've lived, I reacted to it. I mean, one day we get Sugar Twin knocked out because of cyclamates. Biggest brand in Canada, cyclamates didn't go away. The next day we get hexachlorophene killed. They're killing FDS. We have the #2 hairspray in the country. They take VOCs away, and we have to take a 20% hit in profit margin. Thankfully, we put the right chemical in, and nobody else did, and we've been #1 for years. I mean, we had PETA protests when we barely tested against animals. We were sued by McDonald's. We were sued by Procter. We were sued by McDonald's for Molly McButter.
I was like, wait, what were you sued by McDonald's for?
You know what? I created Molly McButter, and it was ridiculous. I mean, there was an article in the Chicago papers about Molly McButter and the success, and I wonder what McDonald's thinks about that. 2 days later, we get sued. Long story short, we pay them $1 and promise not to use Molly McButter in any of their products. But it was a 2-year. I mean, this is big money for people like us. Right. I tell my people, we're here to solve problems, and if I find out about a problem from somebody else but you're not going to make my team. You're not going to stay here. It's like, we are here to solve problems. I had a fantastic head of operations who, was really, really good. And every so many months he'd come in and say, Houston, we have a problem. I mean, I'm on the board of Northwestern Healthcare. When they make a mistake, somebody gets killed. When we make a mistake, we drop glass beaker in a shampoo vat and it somehow gets out on the market and we have to bring it back. I mean, I believe communication is everything. And if you're afraid to tell your boss, you got a bad boss, or you're working or you don't have the guts to work at the company. And we've had awful stuff happen. I mean, awful stuff, but it's business, it's life, it's kids, it's, nobody's ever promised you it was an easy road. But guess what? I don't fire him when I hear, I don't fire him. I sit down and figure out how to work it out, unless there's been complete and utter fraud or negligence. And, I have zero tolerance for that. But people have to feel comfortable that you're on their side. And people say I'm a very, very, very kind person until I'm not, and when I'm not, invariably it's that you've taken advantage of somebody, or you got a sexual harassment situation, or I actually do something people think was really weird. I think an assistant for an executive is one of the most important people you can hire. I put them through a 2-hour test. I literally come up with questions. I haven't done this for a while. I'm in a meeting with the mayor, and the school calls, and my son has broken his jaw, and he's at the hospital. What are you going to do? I get a phone call from an executive who is on his way to Europe. I hear from his family somehow that the wife has had a heart attack and she's in the hospital. What are you going to do? I mean, I just want to know what their judgment and their calls would be. And you've heard rumors of sexual harassment. You can go to HR, you can go here, you can keep quiet, you can, and I know who the people are after answering questions like that. It makes them extremely nervous, but I know how they think. You know, the people who would never bother me when a kid gets hit, broken jaw, because I'm with the mayor, I don't want anything to do with them. The one who's not going to talk about the sexual harassment claim to somebody they trust, I don't want them there. You know, somebody needs money, figure out how to get it to them. If we waste $1,000, we waste $1,000. You know, I need people who think, and everybody's got stuff, you know, real stuff. So, you know, it's funny. We acquired St. Ives on the West Coast, and the guy who owned St. Ives really didn't think very much of us. And years ago, there was a lot of reason not to think very much of us. But by the time we acquired it, it was a disaster. They thought we were Attila the Hun. And I took a bunch of people out there, and we're explaining our policies and all this stuff. And somebody said, well, I've got a kid who can't get to the doctor except on Thursday mornings. And no matter what, I keep getting penalized because I'm out on Thursday mornings and the kids are always sick. What would you do? And I go, well, gosh, I've been a working mom for a lot of years, and I got working moms up here. I'd go find a doctor who takes care of my kids on Saturday. But talk to me. If your kid's got leukemia, I'm likely to give you as much time off as you possibly want, you know? Yeah. So, you know, trying to create you're raising a family. That's what you're teaching people what is acceptable in your environment and what's not. And if you don't do that, they're going to make it up. We also had, we started our GDL meetings with what's the rumor in the workplace, you know, because if you don't tell them, they'll make it up, you know. So right. We had a lot of whoppers too. And sometimes you can't say. Sometimes you're acquiring a company, it's gotten out. You can't really talk to people about it. And, you know, you have to say, look, I've heard a lot of noise about that, and I'm really sorry. I'd like to tell you everything I know, but that's off limits for legal reasons today. And we'll get to it in a couple of weeks, you know, whatever.
It's so true. Like we are almost out of time, and I can talk to you all day. And I think our listeners could listen to you all day and still wouldn't get all the lessons. But as you're talking, I'm thinking, you know, part of resilience is actually, you didn't say this, but my takeaway, I'm like, oh yeah, part of resilience is like facing real life.
Right.
No matter what it is.
You know, so Craig, my oldest, was born at 4 pounds, 11 ounces and 8 weeks early. Luckily, he was healthy. I mean, very lucky. I lost a baby at 7 months, stillborn. And I remember having to go back into work. And I said to my mom and dad and my husband, I said, pass the word. I don't want anybody to mention it. I don't have the strength to be everybody's sounding board. I don't want to connect to people. And I feel as I look back on it that it was probably not a good thing to do for all the people who had similar issues, you know. But sometimes you just know you can't take it. You know, I wasn't able to take it at that point. Because it was also questionable at that point where I'd ever have another kid. And thankfully, I had 2 more and had to go to bed for 7 months on my left side to have 2 more children. But sometimes you just have to know that I need some space right now. The one thing I want to leave your readers, I always hope that I give something that they can take with them. This is one that I love telling people. How many times have you answered a question when you turn around an hour later, or 20 minutes later, or 10 minutes later, say, damn, why'd I say that? You know, why'd I say that? So I leave people with a couple of these when I give speeches, and I go, somebody says something to you and they have this long, strong opinion, and I've learned to look at them and go, you know, I really want to give that some serious thought. I'll be back to you in a little while. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like, stop the conversation. Don't get into the middle of whatever it is, and honor them by saying, I think that's really important, and I really want to give this some thought. You don't sound like an idiot. You don't sound like you're avoiding the question, but you're taking a breath so you can go, that's not something I'm real comfortable answering right now. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many times I had 3 more better lines, you know, more better. 3 better lines when I thought about it a little later than that. So, you know, just tricks of the trade. Just tricks of the trade.
But you know, I'll come back to where we started, right? I've been frustrated for years because I feel like leadership development, well, the gold happens in these conversations. It just can't happen in a training room, and God love all the trainers out there. I've been one of them. but only leaders who have lived it and dealt with reality and made it happen can tell these stories and really, really help someone learn. So I hope people
You know
take-
what? It's like, I'm a huge believer that important people, that people who've really done something in their lives should leave their egos at the door. And most of them do. You know, I'm on the Kellogg Advisory Board, the Kellogg Business School at Northwestern for years. And I could have divided that group of 70 people into, oh my gosh, I would have loved to work with those, and keep those 13 over there in the corner. You know, the egos are beyond, you know, I like sitting at a table where nobody knows what I've done and nobody talks to you and they're too busy interested in themselves. And one day they turn around and say, what do you do? Where are you from? You know, you just casually mention, you know, and then all of a sudden you're interesting to those people. It's like, forget it. You know, it's keeping a low profile is a fun thing to do often. But the humanity of connecting with people, and our interviews at Alberto started when the person walked in the door. My secretary would go down and get them. And if she didn't think they were our culture, it started out in you know, then we probed, took a whole nother set of directions to really probe that and walked them around a lot and saw how they handle things. And, you know, it's a different place. Alberto was not an ivory tower, and it's what made it work, you know.
Awesome. I could say thank you about 25 times and it wouldn't be enough. I am going to make sure for everybody listening that we have all the links available so that they can find your book and information about you, and also anything that we referenced, like the Harvard Business Review article. I can't give that away, everybody, because I respect Harvard and they have a business. So I will put the link where people can buy the PDF for that. It's worth it, everybody. It's like $8.
But you take care and call me if you need any re-recording or anything. I'm available anytime.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks.